Hello friends, thanks for joining me today. I am putting just the final touches on this pen and ink illustration, which as you can see there, I'm rather puffingly, to use a marketing term, puffery, calling pen and ink state of the art. Well, it's the state of my art anyway. And I'd be delighted to meet anybody who's doing more sophisticated, which no doubt there is. I just don't know who, where, and how. I've got about 40 hours, not counting the hours I spent doing the charcoal drawing. I think I've got about 40 hours in cross-hatching alone. And again, in case you've missed this, this is the cover of a book I have here somewhere. Oh, there it is, way over there. Pardon me. Here's the mock-up cover of the book that my client, of which my client has approved. I did a very, very finished charcoal drawing, which has been a huge help to me as I've done this, because here I made all my values decisions. I'm quite confident that if I had not done this first, I would not be coming up with the product that I'm happy with. The figure here is based on a photograph of my daughter that I took running, holding a cane in one hand and so forth. This is a book cover. The young lady's name in the story is Emma. It's a work of fiction, and she's emerging, if you will, out of the dark wood. And what makes this quote-unquote state-of-the-art is that it's colored ink, which is not ink at all, but is in fact liquid acrylics, airbrush paints in rapidograph pens. Okay, this is all review for those of you who have been following me. Forgive me for stating over and over, but some of you weren't here. And what really makes it state-of-the-art is that I drew on this side, and on this side, and on this sheet, and on this, and on this, and on this. So I have drawn with colored inks on 6 different planes, 6 different layers, so that I can achieve a very high degree of subtlety, not what one normally thinks of when one thinks of pen and ink. So I've got just a little bit more to do, and I'm going to grab this pen at the moment, even though it's labeled purple. I'm getting lazy late in the process. This says actually has dark blue in it. And I'm quite happy with the illustration. Let me just show you. According to this, I've got some shadows coming this way, which I find that I like quite a bit. So I'm going to come in here and do some shading. Now, forgive me for a moment. Let me grab my other camera that is, come on, other camera. Here we go. That is, not doing anything. Glad I grabbed it. My other camera that is, that I'm using to record super close-ups. I am going to do a finished version of this video. An edited version, which I don't do very often anymore, because the editing process just eats up way too much time. So about 1.5 years ago, I decided to go the live route, depending which state you live in, or which part of which state you live in perhaps. I decided to take the live video alternative, but this particular video I'm going to do a finished or an edited version of it. So I'm recording, besides what I'm recording live, I'm recording, I don't want to do 2 layers of blue, so let's switch here to a medium brown for the second layer of this dark area. And because that's now a little bit too greenish, I'm going to come here with red and anti-green it a little bit by adding red to it. Does that make sense? Especially when you're painting, or drawing in this case, when you're painting in transparent layers, which is the way I think everybody should paint most of the time. But when you're painting in transparent layers, it's very common to anti some color. Like if something's too green, you anti-green it. That means you add red, but it sounds counterintuitive to say, I'm going to paint this tree red. That the image that comes to mind, the picture that comes to mind when you say that, is just so jarring that it's inappropriate. So instead of saying, I'm going to paint this tree, this foliage red, I say in my inner talk, I'm going to or anti-green it, which I do with red, of course. But I'm not painting the tree red, I'm just making it less green. And here, it's exactly what I'm doing. I'm back to blue ink again, dark blue. Let me look at that. Yeah, but now that I've done two, I find I want another dark stripe, dark shadow perhaps. I'm not sure if what I'm drawing right now is a shadow or like a root laying along the ground. Doesn't really matter. Whichever of those, either one will do fine. It's really just the dark shape that I want going this direction. Okay, so I am, as I said, very close to finished. Let me show you some of the, hang on while I adjust this other camera again. Forgive me for dividing my attention. Okay, let me show you now some of the things that I have done in the final touch-ups of this illustration. I'll show you some of what I have done and some of what I will do. First of all, I have taken an X-Acto knife, and anywhere where I want the image, the illustration to be lighter than it is, I've come in here like this and scratched ink off the Mylar. Make sense? Of course, that's pretty easy if all your ink is on one level, but of course it's not. So I've had to scratch here and here and here. In fact, I'm going to scratch here just a little bit more. So I'm assuming that this Mylar concept is making sense to you. I'm assuming that. You understand, don't you, that the more layers down that the ink is, the more subtle effect that ink has on the final image, right? So for instance, you see here all of this red, all vertical red. That's pretty powerful on that, but when I put the next layer on top of it, just line it up real quickly. When I scan these images, I'll be very careful to get them all lined up, but for now it just... Okay, so what happened to the red? Well, it is certainly there. It's just much more subtle because it's got all this stuff on top of it. But let me grab a piece of white paper. Let me isolate for a moment. Here's what this illustration would look like if all I had was the front and the back, because there is drawing on the back as well, but I can't isolate those two. But if all I had was the first two layers. So I want you to notice the difference here in the color between this and this. Do you see that? Now let me go back one more layer. So now I'm going to isolate the four top layers of illustration. So again, the difference between that and that. Look, for instance, on this girl's blue shirt. How much richer the color is. Now it's lighter and brighter. And then finally, the very bottom, even the bottom layer is affected. Okay, that is a good introduction to what I'm going to do next. So when I finish in this technique, the very last thing that I do is I'm going to paint. Yes, so you could say, well, wait a minute, isn't that cheating? I thought this was all supposed to be pen and ink. Well, all the color, all the texture is pen and ink. And I know very well where I'm going to start painting. And I'm going to start most often on the very back, and I'm going to start with white. So I have here, we'll have here in a minute, some liquid acrylic white paint. And now to work on the back, I'm going to use my light table. So I've got all the pages stacked up exactly backwards. And I'm going to paint. I'm not sure that big brush that I grabbed a moment ago is really, I don't want one quite that big. Yeah, here we go. gnarly old brush, but it'll do the job. So I'm dipping my brush in pure white liquid acrylic paint. Okay? And there are parts of this illustration, the woods, the light in the back of the woods, that I want just about as bright as I can get it. I want it opaque white. Now let me think. Does it? No, I can paint over her arm as well. Okay. So stick with me for just a minute. This looks like a mess at the moment because of the light table. You're seeing quite the mixture. If I turn off that light there, now we can see a little bit more what we're doing. And it looks to me like it's going to take more than one coat, more than one layer of this white, because I want the ground, the base upon which this artwork is drawn. I want it as white as it can get. Okay, I just got a signal that my battery on the other camera is dying, so bear with me for just a minute while I switch batteries. Turn it back on. Forgive me for this distraction on our broadcast. It has to be done so that I can get a good video that I will edit later on. Now, if I get in a real hurry, like I am right now, I'll grab my hair dryer. Pardon the noise. Sorry for that racket. I probably dislike that even more than you do. And I'm going to go to a bigger brush here. So let's get this more opaque. Now the back for her shirt. By the way, here's some opaque blue that I did a little while ago on the very last page under her jeans. Get it? To make them just pop a little bit more intense blue. I believe I can paint her also. I'm not going to finish this process right now with you watching, because by now you've got the idea. You don't need to see me do the whole thing once you've understood what it is that I'm doing. I'm going to set this page aside for a few minutes while it dries, and I can continue to work on whichever page I need to work on. So going to throw a slight curveball at you. And that is that I'm now going to paint some white, not on layer number 6, as I was doing a minute ago, but on layer number 4, 1 page up. So this will come out slightly brighter, lighter, whiter than what I painted a few minutes ago. And I want this to happen on the ground at her feet. Let me show you just for fun. Here's the illustration, the charcoal illustration that I laid out. The two lightest areas in this illustration are her shirt, the edge of her jeans, her face perhaps, but that's just a sliver of light, and the ground down here. Up here, that I just painted to the back to get that light, but this slightly light, I want a little bit more punch right down here. So that's why I'm painting this particular part on layer number 4. So it'll come out just a little bit brighter than what I did on layer number 6. By the time I'm done, I will have quite a large area of this painted white, but I don't just get out a roller and paint it like this, because every time I paint something, then I want to check it, see how it looks. Of course, I can wipe this off if I need to. Forgive me again for the noise. Okay. Let's turn that over and see how that, ooh, yeah, that looks good. I like the way that popped, that little light. And I'm going to come in and bring it down a little bit further. Get the idea? So that's probably enough for you to watch. I don't want to bore you too much. I don't mind boring you a little bit. Now, by the same token, if there's some area I want darker, then here I'm being really cheap and easy. I'm not even. Sometimes I'll use an archival marker like this and do very blunt, fat cross hatching or scribble hatching, as I call this, when you make the pen draw in both directions, up and down both. So here you see I'm just trying to give a little more shade to the dark edge of that tree. And I believe that I also want, see down here, look, I've got on layer, whoops, I'm making a mess. I better be careful where I put this stuff. I'm going to have to clean that up. But here on layer 4, I've completely blacked that in. But I'm now wondering if I should bring some of that black up to layer number 2. And I will clean that mess up in just a little bit, but I don't need to do it. Let me do just a little experiment down here, way down in the corner. And again, doing this with a Sharpie marker, very blunt tool, making the very bottom of this close-up tree almost as dark as it can be, almost. So let me do that much and then take a look at that. Let's see, where does that darkness go? Right there. Yeah, I think I like that. And again, my model is this illustration. Oh, one of the things I haven't done at all yet, this would be a fun little experiment. One of the things I haven't done at all is the little firefly, I'm not sure that's what they are, but probably, little firefly sparkles. So let's do that right here. So again, as you can imagine, it's not all that easy because not all of this ink is on this layer. So there, I said, let's put a sparkle firefly right there. So there's layer number 1 scratched out. If I turn it over, can I even note? Can I even tell where I am? Well, almost not. Hang on. Okay, right there. Right there. Scraping very carefully. Scratching very carefully. Let me turn this off. There we go. There we go. Now, do I need to scratch off something off layer 3? Well, I might, except, whoops, I'm giving you all a great big earthquake ride, so hang on for a second. Everybody got an earthquake ride. Bring you guys down a little bit. Okay. Well, yes, I could continue to scratch through all the underlayers, but I have here a shortcut. How about one spot of whiteout right there? Yep, it's in the right place. And then when that dries, which will take a minute, I'll come back and scratch off as much as, I won't put white out here, that would be a horrible violation of the pen and ink technique. But I don't mind putting it here where it's going through the pen and ink look. Okay, let me take a quick break right there and clean up a little bit of my mess that I made just a few minutes ago, and I'll be back with you in just a minute. Thanks for watching. All right, back and continuing this project. I'm to the point now mostly where I am painting the back of several of these pages. Certainly this page is going to be completely opaque before I'm done. You see here I've done white here and orange opaque here. This is what it looks like on the front of that page. Pretty funny. And then one layer up and one layer up from there. So, for instance, I did orange down here at the bottom. And if I want to see, well, did that have any effect or not, I can bring a white piece of paper one layer up, you see? I can say, ooh, yeah, that did make a difference. Okay, so right now, and for the last several minutes, I've been trying to decide what color to paint the back of this tree. Now, I'm not going to paint on page 6 because that's already been violated here. That there's no. I'm going to go behind page 4. I don't know if that makes sense to you. And I've been actually playing around for the last several minutes with 3 colors. Do I want to paint on layer 4? Do I want to paint the back of this tree white? Can you see the difference that is making there? Or I could leave that there. Or do I want to paint the back of the tree black? Ooh, that makes a difference. Makes it darker. Or again, do I want to paint it orange, maybe even bright orange? Ooh, that makes a difference too. Okay, and I will tell you, I made my decision before I turned the camera on, and I have decided to do orange, but not quite this dark. Okay, so more like what I did over here. So let me set that up then. So the testing is done. We're talking here about painting on the back of the tree here, orange. And let me show you how I'm doing that. I have here a little pot, a little cup that I use frequently to do white opaque. That's some gouache that I'm mixing with a little bit of white acrylic. The acrylic stabilizes the gouache, makes it a more stable mixture. So that's very opaque white. Now, I'm painting the back of the tree. So if I want to see exactly where the back of the tree is, because I don't want to paint the back of the girl, just the tree. So So if I want to see exactly where the back of the tree is, I can turn the light table on. That makes sense? I don't want to paint on this level. That's that's too high up in the stack. It would have too much impact. So I want it to be kind of subtle. And here's how I'm doing this. I'm taking, and I don't need the light on at the moment, so I'm going to leave it off. Put a couple drops of liquid orange acrylics, and then with this white paint, turning it into a pale orange. Just the back of the tree. And in a minute I am going to turn the light table back on. Yeah, I can paint the back of that vine too, that's alright. Now I'm going to be pretty careful here and paint right up to the edge of my girl. Because I'm pretty sure I'm going to paint the back of her white, because I want her to pop out a little bit more. I want a little bit of contrast between her and the tree. I almost went with painting the back of this tree black. I honestly did, because that would push the tree back even further and make the girl come forward. But I finally decided that when it comes to 4-color printing, so right, this illustration is going to be printed, and you always lose color with the 4-color printing process. So I decided it would be wiser to go with more color instead of less. So that is my thought process here. As you can see, I've already painted some of this page right here black, so now I can paint this orange right on top of that. I don't need to carefully go around it. And of course, I don't mind if there are slight brush strokes. That doesn't matter a bit. Or even if there's a slight difference in color, all of that will be fit in very well with the feeling of this great old oak tree. Okay, well, I'm going to paint this part over here too. So there, I've painted the back of the tree orange. Now it's very possible that I'll come back and do white on top of this just to make sure it's as opaque as possible. We'll find out. We'll find out together. Now again, forgive me for the bad noise, but hair dryer time again. There we go. Now, yeah, that's nice. That is quite nice. That just makes that pop just a little bit more. So once again, I'll put them all together. I see this white back here that's peeking through. So the white is making the light come out just a little bit more, and if I want it to come out even brighter, then of course, instead of painting on the back of page 6, I'll paint on the back of page 4. I hope that's all making sense. Now, let's take a little detour and talk about how I've had to do a little bit of experimentation, how to do these fireflies. Let me show you the original charcoal illustration again, and you see that I've got these little specks of white, and I don't really care if those are fireflies or not. They're magical. Maybe it's pixie dust. I don't know. Maybe they are fairies flying through the woods. It doesn't matter. Obviously, fireflies is the most sensible, logical, scientific explanation. But the real issue is they look cool. And here's how I have discovered is the best way, at least so far, to render these fireflies. I've taken an office product here, not an art product, but just a regular whiteout pen, and drawn several little dots right on page 2, right on the back of page 1. You with me? So I have dots. Then I turn it over, turn my light table on, because I can't see those. You see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 fireflies already finished, but let's do more. But I can't see them until then now they show up not as white, but in fact as black dots. So there's one right there, right? I haven't done that one yet, right? Right. So let's do that one right there. And I'm going to grab my X-Acto knife, and once I start scratching, I can turn off the light table because now I know where to scratch. And it's as if I'm doing pen and ink cross-hatching lines as if I were using white ink, which would certainly be permissible. I just feel like doing this technique makes it, so I'm not using white ink on the front of this at all. I feel like this technique gives me just a little bit more control. Okay, now that did not get anywhere close to completely white. Why not? Hang on, let me adjust my other camera here just for a second. Again, I'm taking 2 videos so that I can hang on, so that I can edit one carefully. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that didn't come very white. Why? Well, one very simple reason is that there's black ink on the back of this page. So now I have to come in here and scrape off the whiteout that I put there originally. And if I want some of this ink to disappear, then I have to scratch it off as well. So now I'm scratching ink off page, what I'm calling page 2, the back of page 1. Got it? Now if I just stop right there, I have achieved a fair effect. Let me show it to you with all stacked up. See, that's not bad. And some of these fireflies, quote unquote, some of these dots, I'm likely to leave just like that. But most of the time, what I'm doing is coming back and applying the whiteout once again right to that area. That will cause this spot really to pop out. Okay, so that's what I'm doing right now. I've got several fireflies. Hello, welcome back. So in a sense, I am now working my way forward on finishing this illustration. What I mean is, page 6, as you can see, page 6 is completely done. It's covered with, now I could come in here and get fancy and remove stuff, scratch stuff perhaps, but no need to do that. I'm happy. So page 6 is opaque. Page 5, very nearly so. But the way that I determined what needs to be done, I'm going to do a bunch on page 4. You can see I've already, just if you watched my last broadcast, I painted the back of the tree orange. And I'll show you how I decided what color to paint that. So now that's solid orange, which of course has just sweetened up a little bit the final illustration. I can't show you what that would have looked like white. I can show you what it would look like now if I painted on the back of page 1, and it would brighten it up quite a bit. But that's not, now I'm working on the girl. And I have discovered something good and interesting. As I expected, I'm going to paint behind Emma Lou. I'm going to paint white. Oh, not on that layer. Woo! That turns her into albino or something. No, on the back of page 3, that is on page 4. Here's what white does. Ooh, it just brightens her up, warms her up just the right amount. So I like the color that I've got on her shirt and on her skin and on her leg down here. But her blue jeans here, I like the highlight better if it's white, but I like the dark part of her blue jeans better with this, way back on page 5, with this dark blue showing through. So let me show you that again. I like the dark blue showing through here. I show you here what happens if I eliminate it and put white on the back of page 3. That is on page 4. I'm confusing you, aren't I? And I don't like this part. I like it better dark, but I like this part. Okay, so I need to come in here and on page 4 then do some white highlights. And I have had this tool in mind throughout this whole process. It's a Uniball Signo white pen. Let me make sure it's, yep, still works on here. And so again, in order to retain the cross-hatching feel, the cross-hatching look, I'm going to come in here and with a little bit of wrestling with this product, I'm going to paint white cross-hatching. This is level or layer 4, if you will. Oh good, it works better if I go slow. There we go. Okay, a little bit more right along the edge of her cuff, her turned up pant leg. And while I'm at it, I'm going to do some cross-hatching with white going the other way. Now let's give that just a minute to dry. And forgive the bad noise. I'm going to pick up the hairdryer one more time. I think that's got it. Now let's check that out. So here's the pages all in order. Yes. So I've got just a little bit more white along the edge of her blue jeans because I just did white cross-hatching on level or page 4, leaving the dark blue on page 5 or 6, whichever it was, still showing through. So I'm happy now, a little bit more shading on her jeans. The back of her shirt is quite simple on page 4. Again, let me show that to you again, just so you can see how I determined. Do I want to do this on the back on page 2? Oh no, way too washed out. How about on page 4? There we go, perfect. I want Emmylou is the star, of course, of this book, and I want her to jump forward pretty strongly. So once again, I'm using here my mixture of white gouache and a little bit of white acrylics. The gouache adds opacity and the acrylics add stability. Not painting her jeans. Remember, I want this blue blob to show through on her jeans. Now, if at any point I get lost, I can always turn on the light table and make sure her face is lined up and make sure I'm painting the right area. I'm going to paint here first because I'm not sure which of those 2 lines is the more accurate. So I'm going to paint there. Oh, and the back of her arm, definitely. That gets white as well.
because she, of course, this figure, this girl, is the focal point of the illustration. So I want her to pop just a little bit more than the rest of the illustration. So she gets white, definitely white on the back of her face. I'm leaving her hair at the moment. And you'll notice I'm not being extremely careful about edges because, well, you'll see when I turn it over, it usually doesn't matter. The edges are defined quite strongly on the very front page of this illustration, page 1, level 1, layer 1. And of course, if I change my mind, I can come back and modify this slightly. Plus, I tend to like just a little bit of jitter, just a little bit of wiggle on many of my edges. I don't want in this illustration, and again, this is not typical of pen and ink work, I do not want all the edges in this illustration to be razor sharp. I rather like the slight lack of registration gives a softness to several of the edges. Big noise again. Okay, now always the great unveiling. Let's see how that looks. Oh, that's better. Good, good, good. Her face is popping. Now, of course you understand that after I do all of this working from the back, I will come in here wherever necessary and draw again on the front. The last word of this illustration, of course, is the top layer. All of this stuff that I'm doing underneath is just subtle backdrops. But you do it last. You don't do it first, in my opinion. I mean, next to last. And that's what it looks like right as it is right now. It's not lined up perfectly, but pretty close. Come on. There. I'm going to do, I don't need to paint the back. I probably want to, well, I won't do much painting on the back of page 1. I've decided I am going to paint the back of her cane. Well, let's just go ahead and do that right now. Okay, I've got the brush right here ready to go because her cane is getting a little bit lost in the messiness, and I don't think I have any drawing, any cross-hatching on her cane except on page 1. So by painting this white, I'll make it pop just a little bit more, little more than it was popping. Bring it forward just a little bit. This cane in the story, it's supposed to look like a natural piece of wood. It's not a turned or fancy carved cane. It's a natural piece of wood or bent wood, and that little crook helps make that clear. It's not a sophisticated piece of equipment. That's important to the character. Okay, sorry about that dreadful noise. I do not like loud noises. Unless it's good music loud. Okay, good. That's nice. Yeah, that really adds I don't know how well you can see that, probably not that well, but that really popped that cane forward. Made it really pop out. I'm very happy with that. I'm getting close. I'm almost certainly, see, I'm not going to paint on the back of page 1 very much at all. So far, the only painting I've done on the back of page 1 is that cane you just saw me do and the fireflies. And it's almost certainly going to stay that way. Now, on the back of page 4, though, on page 4, I still have room for modifications if I so choose. Let's go back and look. And it's pretty dark up here. How much will that show? Let's see what would happen if I were to paint the back of this area up here black. Ready? So let's see if it makes any difference at all. Oh, so subtle. I can hardly see anything. Well, let's see what happened if I did color back there. Let's see if that shows up any better. Hot orange, bright orange. Ooh, now that does show up a little bit. Now I have to decide, well, do I like it? Do I like it better with the what I just called hot orange? And you know what? I think I do. Now, I'm not limited to orange. I'm just using it because I know I want the overall cast of this illustration to be brown. And of course, the orange is the chroma version, the closest colored chroma color to brown. You know what? I do think I'm going to paint. Now, how about over here? Do I want any of this? You know, I'm feeling like not quite this intense, but I do think I like. This is on level 4 now. I do think I like warming this area up, not over here, but over here. So if I to be consistent, then I would do that with an orange pen, and because I want the mark of cross hatching there. How far over does it come? Just to the first major tree, this area right here. Tell you what, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to go get a dip pen, which I haven't used yet, so that I don't have to fill a Rapidograph pen with pure orange ink, and I'm going to do some orange cross etching. Okay, be back in just a second. So I just went and rated my calligraphy pen kit and found this bamboo pen. Said, wait a minute, that might work really well. Well, it's working okay. It'll do. It'll do. Because I want a fairly, because I'm 4 layers down, I want a fairly bold or thick line. I don't want to mess with skinny little stuff at this point, because it'll barely show up. See, I'm getting messier as I go, aren't I? Again, all of this will just barely show because it's four layers back. There we go. Like that, just fine. What a mess, eh? Okay, I'm gonna, while that's drying, let's rinse that out, wipe off my messy fingers. Thank God for Kleenex. And let's do some painting right away here. So again, I discovered that a pretty strong orange looks kind of good behind this area. And so I'm going to paint all of this, and I really do want it opaque orange because I don't want anything underneath this showing through. I discovered that a pretty tight orange is the color that I want. See, I'm not doing fake cross-hatching here with my brush, just to help it fade out a little bit. Am I making sense to you? I hope I am. So with that orange piece of paper a few minutes ago, I discovered that, yeah, Orange looks good behind this part of the illustration. Some of the tricks that I'm doing with this, what I'm calling state-of-the-art cross-hatching, some of the tricks are similar, in my experience, in my understanding, to in what I've done, similar to what I do in pastel. My favorite approach, favorite technique for pastels these days is to do an underpainting in acrylics, to lay down large areas of color, and with pumice, not hummus. You eat hummus, right? Pumice is rough stuff, not to be confused with hummus that you eat. Pumice is the rough stuff in that you can put in soap or in gesso. So again, my favorite approach to pastels is a layer of acrylics and then a transparent gesso. I didn't test that area, so I better go careful on that. Okay, once again, forgive the noise. Let's give this a quick blow, and I'm anxious to see what it looks like. Okay, let's see how it looks now. Yeah, good. Do you see? You can't even, that messy cross hatching I did up there, it's far enough back. It just gives a nice warmth to that area, and a little bit of the orange, not much. See, that's how much is peeking through even on layer 3. Do you see? So it warms that up just a little bit. I'm liking that. I love this technique. I love this approach to pen and ink cross hatching. It gives me super control of everything. One thought I had, this might be the last thing that I paint, and then I'll do my final touches on the front. These vines actually play a funny, significant role in the story. Not these vines, but vines play a significant role in the story. That's part of the reason there are so many. And I have two vines way up here at the front, these two that sort of crisscross. One has a primarily reddish tint, and the other has primarily a greenish tint. And I'm wondering about what I did to the cane, about doing that to them as well. Just thinking. Oh, I didn't paint the back of her foot. I just realized I missed a spot here on layer 4. I need to do that. Her foot needs to come forward a little bit, but I'm quite happy with the effect of the brightness, the intensity of the color of her shirt and her skin tones. Again, the very last thing that I will do is cross hatching here on layer number 1. It's the final word, but I'm very, very close to where I want to be with all this. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try a little bit. I almost said practice. I'm not going to practice. I'm going to paint a little bit of one of these vines, just a little bit, and see if I like it. And if I do, I'll finish the whole thing. If I don't, I'll come back in here probably with a Q-tip, a cotton swab. That's what I should be calling it, not the brand name, but you all know what I mean, Q-tip. and remove this. But let's see what that looks like before I proceed. And sorry, once again, need to blow dry that before I turn it over so I don't make a mess. Okay, good, dry. You want to see something kind of funny? That's level 3, 4, 5, and 6. That looks kind of funny, doesn't it? Here's level 2. That doesn't look too bad. But, oh man, it all comes together when you put it. Look at level 1. Okay, so bringing that vine forward. Ooh, I do like that. Does that mean I do it all the way down? I am not sure. Do I just do part of it? Again, I like the dimensionality of the way it makes that pop. So, do I want to do the same thing to this log? Let's look at, keep your eye on that log there, that big one that goes across. What would happen if I did the top edge of that? Ooh, I like that too. Okay, I'm going to paint the top edge of that log and the back of these vines. This is all, again, well, wait, the log is way back here on level 4, page 4, way back on number 4. But I do like the way that looked, so just popping it out just a little bit, and just the top part of it where the sun is hitting it. Okay, set that aside, let that dry. Now, let's do the back of these vines. And I'm going to do a little bit on this one right here. And I don't need to be, how well can I see this? Yeah, I can see it well enough, I think. I'm not concerned that this be extremely opaque. Little tiny bit of translucence is fine in this case. So I already know this is really going to make these vines pop, as I'm saying. Even if it's not perfectly opaque. And I'm letting them fade out just a little bit at the top and the bottom. Let's try that really quickly, see how that looks. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. It's kind of exciting. Enough. Is my log dry? Yes, it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh yeah, that's fun. Now it's a little bit washed out to me, a little bit too light white. So, for instance, one of the things I'm going to do then is come back to my primary medium, which is, of course, pen and ink. I continue to call it ink, even though, as you all know if you've been following me, it's not ink at all. It's liquid acrylics, airbrush paint. And if it's good enough for an airbrush, it certainly is good enough for a rapidograph pen. The rapidograph pens are pretty fussy, finicky, challenging. But airbrushes, yeah, you might be right. Did I lose the cane, Nancy? That's very possible. Nah, it still works. It still, because her hand's on it. It still works, I believe. But there, I do like it. I do like that, those vines, now that I've warmed them up a little bit. I really don't want them white. Yep. I think the cane sticks out because it's contrary to the grain of the trees, where the vines are kind of coincident. Can I use that word? Their primary movement coincides with the movement of the trees. So I think we're coming out all right. Thanks for that word, though, Nancy. That was a good observation. All right. Anybody out there inspired to go try some pen and ink, cross-hatching, pen and ink work? Probably way beyond in technique. In sophistication, I mean that in the technical sense. I don't mean that I'm sophisticated. I just mean in the complexity of the technique. Way beyond what most of us think of when we think of good old pen and ink. Now, a couple of funny things have shown up now that I've got everything, all the backs painted. Yeah, I like that log. By the way, I will not glue these together when I'm done. When I put them in my scanner, and I'll take probably 3 scans, quite high res. The scanner will push these pages together. Does that make sense? I made the mistake one time of gluing the pages together, and believe me, it was a mistake. I mean, I survived, but it was not a good effect. It's just better just to leave them as separate leaves, and if one were to frame it, then you would put it behind glass, of course, and the glass would push them together like that. Oh, one other little trick, back to my pen that I wasn't sure if I was going to use it at all. I don't want to do any cross-hatching on the front, but I have found that just a single dot makes for a very nice little pinprick of a firefly, and I feel like I can get away with that. So that's the only thing on this surface that's not cross-hatching is a few dots. And again, I feel like I can get away with that. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will post the final illustration several places: Facebook, YouTube, and at the end of this video. But the thing I need to do now is just some very careful mashing down, lining things up, get her face lined up, and ask myself, okay, does it need any tweaking? I feel like it does. I feel like it needs to be warmed up. I'm pretty happy with the flesh tone of her arm, but I feel like her face needs a little warming up. And as I mentioned a minute ago, the back of this foot needs to be painted. So I'll do that right now, but sign you guys off. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be back. Tomorrow I'm doing a fundraiser downtown Raleigh. I'll be broadcasting from there. Thanks for joining me.